Should you take your puppy into a workplace or school environment if you want them to become a therapy dog? Short answer is no. In this episode, Sam goes deep into why we at Therapy Dogs Australia will never recommend taking the risk of bringing your puppy into the environment you want them to work in before they are trained and assessed. Listen in to learn why. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode with the Therapy Dogs Australia podcast. So
Hello, everybody.
We've got Sam here and myself, Max, today. Sam's somewhere different for those who watch on the YouTube channel. It's the first time, I think.
Clinic today.
Yeah, you're at the clinic.
Yeah. So I am at the clinic currently 2 days a week, and I work from home the other 3 days. So normally when we're doing therapy dog stuff, I do that from home, but I had a little bit of time today. So we are going to have a little chat about some stuff, which is great. Got a little Nala here today.
She's such a cutie. She looks very comfortable on the couch.
She lives her life on the couch. Loves it. We just had our lunch break here, so she's exhausted from playing with all our other little therapy dogs that we got here today.
Such a social time.
Such a fun time. Loves it. She loves it. Cool.
So what we're going to talk about today is how age plays a role with training therapy dogs and everything that goes with that. We had a lot of questions. Yeah,
it's coming up very, very regularly, and I understand that definitely. But I just wanted to, I know we've talked about it in podcasts before, but I wanted to touch on it again because it keeps coming up, and I think it's difficult to understand that everybody's situation can be so different. So I don't want people putting pressure on themselves that their dogs need to reach a certain point by 12 months or whatever, So if we could just talk about that, but we're going to talk about retirement age as well and how to make those decisions and progression planning. So for anyone that's sort of ends up building a business around animal assisted services, then you will have started to learn that availability of animals starts to become something that you have to manage as a part of your business management and planning. So yeah.
it's a whole thing because Sonny is semi-retired, isn't he?
Yeah, so he is 13 in January. And it's October now. So he's nearly 13. Nala she must be turning 4.
Yeah, I remember you said she was 3, so she must be on her way to 4.
So 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah. Oh my goodness. She looks like a baby.
She does.
So because I got her when Sonny was 8, or started the process when he was 8. So I got her, that's right. I got her in December 2019 because then we had COVID straight after. Like it was COVID, like March 2020 was when COVID started to kind of become a thing in Australia. So, and I already had her. Yeah, cool. Got it. Got my dates right. So he was 8 when I started that process. It's a lot of planning and
what
putting
made
names
you finally make
on
that
lists.
decision to get Nala?
Because it takes so long to get a dog from a breeder. Well, it did back then. I think we spoke to Tamara about that from Whiskey River, and she was like, no, there's like dogs everywhere now because something to do with COVID. There's like over availability of dogs. And I have certainly seen that on people's, some of the breeders that I follow on social media. Like there's always availability, whereas it used to be like When I bought Nala, it was wait list time.
How long did you wait? Was it, because it was pretty common for it to be 6 months to a year pre-COVID.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how long, but I did do a lot of research. I wrote up like basically a resume for what I could offer the dog, and like the sorts of things that I wanted from the breeder, blah, blah, blah. So, and I made a short list. I was really hoping for something in Queensland. And I made a short list based on that, and then found like a local breeder. And I met Nala when she was, I think she might have been 5 or 6 weeks old. I've told this story before, but anyway, so the idea was that Nala was going to takes a while to find a dog, find a right breeder, be on their lists, get a dog. The dog's old enough to come home, and then we start training. So, as you should with any dog, we have to train pet dogs as well. So then the idea being, I think Sunny must have been, so Sunny's birthday is like the 1st of January. So I got her in December. So he was 9.
That's an easy birthday to remember.
I know.
So cute.
Nala must have just turned 4. I got her in December. So she was born in October. I think she's the 6th. So she must have just turned 4. I cannot believe she's 4. That's ridiculous. That's outrageous. You're not 4. You're just a baby. You're just a baby. So then Sunny's 9. So I had a year. I was planning to retire him at 10. Just thinking, because he's a large breed, medium to large breed dog, being a lab.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, retire him at 10, which is a great innings. Because he's been a therapy dog since he was 1.5. So the whole process is about having her ready for once he retired.
For that transition.
Yeah. And so I had like this actually playpen you can see behind me. I raised Oliver in that playpen. That's Oliver's playpen. He still loves it.
Does he?
He loves it. He knows how to open the door from the outside, and he goes in there. He loves it in there.
Let me in.
That's why it's still there. Because he's
expecting treats, or it's
no, he's just always loved it in there. He just always loved it in there.
Cute.
And the other spot he sits is behind this plant. Show you this plant, because he loves, how I say it, he loves being outside, sitting in gardens and stuff. He always sits behind this plant. I've had this plant forever. It's like a little palm thing.
He loves that plant.
So he sits between the plant and the wall. So he's like underneath the leaves of the plant.
It's little Balinese.
His own little garden. So funny. He's such a funny dog. But yeah, so Nala was in the playpen as well. So she grew up in the playpen too. And I was here 5 days a week back then. So we get a lot of questions about this. But I just think everybody needs to make informed decisions about what they do, because people ask us all the time, this is what I get, this is what the conversation is all the time, is can I take my puppy, or I am taking my puppy to my work or to my school? Our general stance, which everyone knows this because you've heard us say it 1,000 times, is no, do not take your puppy. The reason for that is because it's really easy to stuff it up. It's really easy to get it wrong. So giving that like sweeping general advice, we've talked about this before, like on other podcasts, but I'll just summarize. But we have another podcast. We can put it in the show notes or something. But basically, we have a few. We have a few on this.
We've talked about it a lot.
You can flood your puppy. So you can end up causing your puppy to be stressed in these environments, which is very, very hard to then counter condition. So definitely in the Whiskey River podcast, we talked about that with Tamara, the breeder. but it is really, really hard to then, if you've already accidentally stuffed it up, it's really, really hard to undo. And we know lots of teams that have tried to train a dog that has been taken to a school or a workplace as a puppy. And by the time someone temperament tests them, like by the time they come to our courses, and either we meet the dog or one of our locum trainers meets a dog, we look at the dog and we're like, what? This is not a therapy dog. This should never be a therapy dog. Like this dog is very, very
Just a
anxious.
cooked puppy.
Absolutely cooked, So to even get this dog to a point where it's going to be a happy pet dog is going to take a lot of time and effort and money. So you've got to take the therapy dog thing off the cards, and then people sometimes buy another dog. But then you've got your first dog who's unstable now influencing the other dog, because that's why we try and get like with Sunny, getting Nala when he was 9, when he was still young enough, like he's nearly 13. So he right now, like he's starting to get old now, like he's starting to slow down.
You can see it.
I can see it. Yeah. And so for the last 4 years, they've had it's only been in the last couple of months Sunny started to slow down. So they have had like the best friendship in the whole world because they just love each other. She's just Nala is obsessed with Sunny. She sleeps with him, like she cuddles up next to him when he's sleeping.
What a cute.
It's really cute. She just obsessed. And he loves her, and they've had lots of time playing. But my plan was always to try and clone Sunny because he's the best dog in the world. So I was trying to impart as much as possible, which he has, onto my other dogs. So if you've got an unstable dog and you get a puppy, you actually have to keep them apart a lot so that you don't have the unstable dog having too much influence over your puppy, your young dog, because they can, just as much as a stable dog can guide a young dog in the right direction, an unstable dog can guide them in the wrong direction. So that's
a bit like kids that way, isn't it? They're just copy.
Yeah. They learn
their
from
older sibling or
yeah. It's like they learn from watching each other. Probably more so peers, like if you thought about it in terms of peers, kids at school and stuff like that, like they watch each other, So when you're considering, so I feel like a bit of a hypocrite because I have had puppies in my workplace, but I just want to explain what the risks are and explain, because what is happening is I say to people will email me or whatever and say they're taking a puppy, and I'll say something like, just be really careful taking a puppy because it can go really pear-shaped. We've seen that a lot of times. And then the person will email back and they'll tell me these things that they're doing to account for taking the puppy. But every time they do that, I feel like I'm in a position where if I go, okay, I'm agreeing with their training plan.
Yeah.
But I'm not agreeing with your training plan because I don't know you and I've never met this dog. So.
And you don't know the workplace. You don't know.
I don't really care what you do. My job is to express, hey, this can go wrong. Because I know that. So, hey, this can go wrong. But beyond that, I don't have a duty to tell everybody what to do. So I don't actually have the time to delve into that. If somebody wants to bring me a puppy, and I have done this before, if somebody wants to bring me a puppy and, actually engage in a training plan and get some advice specific to them and XYZ, that's a different story again.
Too.
Absolutely pay for the time.
Commit.
No other dog trainers do that for free. Why would I be doing that? That's only going to take away from all this other stuff I've got to do. So when they write that stuff back to me, which always happens, it's kind of like they're justifying, and sometimes they even are asking, or they'll state it like, oh, it's fine because I'm doing this, or they'll say, I'm doing all this, so is that fine, or things like that. And I don't get into the conversation because I don't know if that's fine or not. And like if you want to do some consulting over it, then we can book some time in.
If you're
But
serious, then
if you're serious about it. But that's why we've done all these podcasts on it, because it keeps coming up and I keep having us, and I'm like, okay, guys. And so now I direct people back to those podcast episodes, and then this will now become another one to go like, okay, so here's what you can have as information for free. Here you go. Like, this is, and it's not going to be specific to anyone's situation. So if you're someone who takes things on board as really sort of specific instructions, this is not specific advice. This is really general advice.
You need a trainer. Like, you need to have, if you want to take it seriously, you need,
you need
commit and book someone in for
every dog is an individual. You need individual advice. That's why we have options for that. Like, we've got live classes, like we've got situations where we can help you with your individual
you do
dog.
One-on-one tutoring, training.
Yeah. And or go to another dog trainer. Like, it doesn't matter, find a dog trainer that's a good fit and spend some time getting some one-on-one input into your dog. Because that's how you get really like advice for, because it's not just about the dog, it's about you as well. So it's about you as a person with your dog specifically. And that's really important, that the person's taken into account, which I've talked about that too, when we talked about, taking advice from online people, influencers and stuff, taking dog training advice from people posting online. We did a podcast on that where I talk a lot about like that it needs to take the human being into account. It can't just be general advice. So some of the things to consider about taking a puppy. One, if I brought a puppy here to the clinic, and I happened to accidentally flood it, and the puppy developed an aversion to this space, that aversion might travel to other spaces as well, or it might not, but the aversion will be here. So now the one place I wanted to be able to take this dog, the dog's got a negative association with. So I think that's a really big risk to take, where
it's a huge gamble.
It's a huge gamble. Like, what if it goes wrong? Like, and if you listen to those podcasts with Tamara, she talks about how easy it is for things to go wrong. So when I say Tamara, I'm talking about Whiskey River. So when you take that risk, so I generally tell people, because they think you've got to socialize the dog at a school, and some dog trainers give this advice. You've got to socialize the dog at the school for it to be able to cope in a school down the track later. But that's not true. So you need to socialize the dog in environments that are similar to a school, but not at a school, and especially not while you're working there, where you can't do anything to support the puppy if it has a negative interaction or whatever, because you're busy working and you don't have any control over these kids and blah, blah, blah.
And for hours on end.
For hours and hours on end. The puppies are tired, and, they're overtired. And so they're more emotional and they're more vulnerable in that way and all that sort of stuff. So they're more likely to have a negative experience when they see a stimulus or whatever. My opinion is that you are taking a massive risk by exposing your dogs to these environments, when if one bad thing happens in that critical period, or even just their really young period, that could result in that dog never being a school dog, never being a clinic dog, ever. Sonny's 13. He's been a therapy dog for nearly 12 years, like 11 and a half years.
That's amazing.
Imagine if he was like you busted it when he was 6 months old. That's his whole career. Like, these dogs can have a career. I've said this before. Oliver's 8, has been literally working. I had him here as a puppy, and a young dog. So he's been in this environment for 8 years. Nala's been in this environment for 4 years. Like, these dogs can have long careers if we do it properly. So I just think weigh up the risk. So when you're weighing up this risk and you're like, I can do it. I can handle it. Some of you, yes. Some of your puppies and young dogs, yes, they will be able to handle it. But what I think is really important to understand is, how will you know? So how do you know if you're doing the right thing
That's a great question.
by the dog? How do you know if you've got the knowledge and the skills to do the right thing by the dog? And how do you know that the dog is the right dog to be able to handle this at this age? If I'm saying that and you're like, okay, Sam, I know because of blah, 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 blah. Great. Good. Because that's my answer too. Same. I know what I'm doing. So, and that's why like it feels hypocritical, but at the end of the day, I know what I'm doing. So I know if I got another puppy, I'd do the exact same thing. That playpen will still be there and I'll do the exact same thing. Because you know what? I've done that now with 2 dogs and they've turned out to be perfect dogs pretty much. So I think I know what I'm doing and I am an accredited dog trainer. I have a very deep, thorough understanding of behavior. I've got a massive amount of control over this environment. This is my clinic. I've got total control over my diary. I've got total control over what clients I book. I've got total control over my workload. I have all of the control over this environment, apart from what people do once they're in the room. So that's the thing I can't control is, you know, what kid's going to do what in the room. One of the things that I did, this was non-negotiable for me, is there was a puppy in that playpen, but there was a working therapy dog in the room. So there was never, ever a situation where I had a puppy in a playpen and had kids coming in here, and because the puppy's asleep, I don't let you, they sleep all day. So
they're not working.
They're not working. That's a thing. So she would sleep all day. Oliver would sleep all day in that playpen, and then he'd wake up. You got to indoor toilet train them as well, because you can't take a puppy when they wake up. They go to the toilet straight away. You can't take a puppy down in the middle of someone's session, but that puppy's going to wee. So you have to indoor toilet train them in their playpen. Then the puppy would wake up and I would say, oh, he's waking up. He's waking up. Do you want to see if he wants to play? And before we let the puppy out, we'd talk about, so you always have to have a toy in your hands the whole time, because puppy's mouth, and it hurts when puppy's mouth.
Like little needles.
They're like needles.
Particularly for kids.
Oh,
yeah.
For sure. And they pull away. And so they get scratched by the teeth as well. So it would be, he's waking up. And if the dog didn't wake up while the kid was here, then they don't touch the puppy. That's it. They don't touch it. But then what happens? So you can play with the puppy for a little bit, but you got to put the puppy back. It's only about 5 or 10 minutes that the puppy can play before they get tired again and they get naughty. And so now the play becomes dysregulated play from the puppy, and they will be barking, biting, jumping, carrying on like idiots. And it's disruptive, and also it's not a nice experience for the client. Any of you that have got puppies at the moment or are listening to this, you've got puppies, you know what I'm talking about. So they reach that witching hour, and it is only very shortly. So if the puppy happens to fall asleep and they're out of the playpen, that's fine. But if they get that dysregulated play, that real sort of red zone play happening, you got to put the puppy back in the playpen. Otherwise, you're teaching them bad behaviors in this space. So when you're doing that, it's really hard for especially kids, but even adults, it's really hard for there to be a puppy in the room and you're not allowed to touch it. We're not allowed to wake it up. We're not allowed to play with it. It sucks, man.
It's so
it sucks.
Tough. Yeah, to see a puppy anywhere and not be able to touch. Yeah.
And remember, we're trying to develop human-animal bond. So we're trying to not make people feel like this relationship with this dog is off to a bad start because you aren't allowed to have a relationship with the dog. The dog's not here for you. You can't touch the dog. Da, da, da. All of that has got a real rupturing. We're getting off to the wrong start with that relationship, I feel, by putting all of that. Maybe it's my own personal profile, but if someone had a dog there and they were like, you can't touch this puppy, like it's got to leave it alone, I, in my head, would switch off attachment to that puppy because I'm like, well, obviously, Sam, you can't love that puppy, okay? Because you're not in a position to be able to love on this dog.
The puppy.
So it's like how when service dogs first became quite popular, and I'd go past like, or Labradors are obviously my favorite thing, always guide dogs or whatever, and I'd be like, I can't believe I can't pet that dog. Like, this is bloody outrageous. But then you just learn to like turn off the little switch in your brain that goes like, I want to pat that. I want to pat that dog, So now I see a service dog and I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like I need to pat it. Any other dog that walks past me down the street, if I don't have a dog with me, I'm patting it. I'm patting every other dog. Like I'm that person. Can I pat your dog? Can I please pat your dog? That's like when I went to the markets and I pat those goats because I was like, whoa. Excuse me. Are these goats here at the markets? I'm patting these goats for sure. I pat the goats for ages.
Cute.
I'm that person. So, but anyway. So
I can imagine though what you're saying, because when you're dealing with vulnerable people, particularly also kids, you don't want to be putting yourself and them in a position where you're constantly having to say no, because it's also then, I imagine it would be rupturing the relationship that you also have with your client, not just the puppy.
Some of the kids we see ain't hearing no bloody no. That's for sure. Like, it doesn't matter what you say. Like, so yeah, absolutely. Like, and yeah, it's probably easier to because you might be listening to this being like, I don't know if that's that big of a deal. It's probably easier to think of it this way. I'm a psychologist. Everything that I have in this room is to benefit the client. Okay. So the way that the room is set out, so that's my fish tank. It's got a heap of angelfish in it.
So pretty.
We have that for client stuff. All these photos of the dogs on the wall, there to facilitate our human-animal bond and all of our metaphors that we make around the dogs' hobbies. So that's the dogs and the hobbies and stuff like that. All of our resources and equipment and things like that, that's where I sit. And then we've got all my other farm animal photos, and we talk about all the relationships of all the farm animals and blah, blah, blah. Everything that we do here is to benefit the client. So I don't do things in my day-to-day job as a psychologist that don't benefit the client. I don't bring things into the room that don't benefit the client. If something's in the room or there's something happening in a session, it is to benefit the client. So if the puppy is here, it needs to be to benefit the client. So I can't see how some of that other stuff about like, well, we're bringing these dogs in, blah, 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 and it's not benefiting. Like, is it benefiting them or not? Like, is it benefiting these kids at this school? Is it benefiting anyone or not? If it's not benefiting anyone, don't do it, because that's the whole point. I know it's a really tricky balance because we need to benefit the dog. So this is one of the really hard things about being a professional allied health or educator or whatever it is, being a professional and offering a professional animal assisted service. You have to balance out the needs of the dog and your demographic, your clientele group. You can't put the needs of the dog before the client group. That is you not acting as a professional. And I know that this might be hard to hear, but you don't need that dog there to do your job. None of us need the dog to do our job. We want the dog to help us do our job because we can see that it can benefit the client, but you don't need it there, which means that if having the dog there is making you less good at your job, it's making your professional service delivery less effective for the clients who are coming to receive your services, then it's not a good idea and it's unethical. So I know that's probably hard to hear.
Hard truths. Yeah.
No, that's probably hard to hear, guys. And if you're in an unregulated industry and you can do whatever you want, maybe that's different again. But I can only talk to you from, I'm in one of the most highly regulated industries. So we'd be among the absolutely most highly regulated. So I can only talk to you from top down. Like we have to take that approach, because I know that we have many, many, many teams that are also psychologists. And then we've also got teams who are medical doctors, and we've got teams who are dentists as well, and RNs and things like that, where patient safety is the utmost. Like, that's the number one priority. None of us need a dog to do a job. I don't need a dog to be a psychologist. I don't need a dog to be a dentist. I don't need a dog to be a GP. I don't need a dog to do any of those things. We want the dog there to benefit client outcomes. So if you bring in the dog along, it needs to be benefiting the client outcomes. If it's not benefiting client outcomes, then it's a waste of time. And if it's making client outcomes poorer, then now it's an ethical concern. And a lot of us can be absolutely disciplined for that. So with that in mind, is the puppy setup that you've got going on, those of you who are already doing it, or anyone who's thinking about doing it, who is it benefiting? If you can answer that question, and you can consider yourself that you could absolutely, don't email me about it, okay? This is between you and yourself, okay? I don't care. I'm past it. I don't care. Do whatever you want. But it's not going to be from my advice, all right? This is general advice, but you got to ask yourself, can you answer that question, and are you happy with that answer? And if your regulatory body asks you that question, can you answer that question, and are you happy with the answer? Okay,
can you back it up as well?
Can you back yourself up? Yeah. Because we can't have it being, so the other scale of things, so what I know some people do is chuck puppies in playpens and no one's allowed to touch the dog. That's it. The other thing that people do is they just have the puppies out, and the puppy just does whatever it wants, and the client just does whatever they want with the puppy, and they think the puppy loves it. Again, I don't know. I don't know if your dog loves it or not. I've never met your dog. However, first of all, that's all about the client. So I don't think that that's the right way to raise a puppy. I don't raise a puppy like that at home. So puppies at home are in playpens, crates, on the lead, or they're having short amounts of time of supervised play, where I'm with them and they're in their right headspace and they're emotionally regulated and they're keeping things are going well. And then as soon as they get, a bit funny or dysregulated, whatever, they get back into a safe situation. So some people might be listening going like, oh, but my dog just sleeps the whole time and it just lays on the couch and it's whatever and people don't care. And blah, blah. Good. That's fine. Like, this is why this is so hard, is because if that's what's happening and you can't find any holes in what you're doing with your puppy, then neither can I. Like, that's what this conversation is about. So who am I to say that that's not happening? Because I know that there are puppies out there that are very chill and very sweet from the very beginning, and they're not developing some kind of anxiety disorder from people patting them all day and picking them up and doing all those things. I absolutely recognize that those dogs do exist.
There's always the exception. There's always
exactly. That's why we don't make rules. Exactly. That's why we largely do not make rules. We make some very heavy recommendations. One of the things that we won't budge on is your dog's got to be in your line of sight at all times if they're interacting with another human being.
Well, so just in general, if you've got a puppy, they either need to be secure or
in your line of sight. Our teams, like our dog and handler teams, like that's something we just won't budge on. Like, you don't hand your dog off to another handler unless they're, properly trained and blah, 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 blah. You don't just hand your dog off. Your dog is in your line of sight at all times. Because I think that is really important. But like, largely speaking, we don't make rules because we're not a regulatory body. We don't have a regulatory body for this. So we don't make rules. We don't enforce rules. That's why it gets to this point where I just go like, okay, so the advice that I'm giving you about not taking your puppy is general advice. If you know what you're doing and your puppy is benefiting and your clientele are benefiting, then what position is anybody in to say to you that you can't do it or don't do it? So, but the whole point of this conversation, even though it's probably sounding a bit ranty, the whole point of this conversation is to ask yourself those questions and to come up with, these are some of the things that you may not have thought to ask yourself, or some of the things that you may not have considered. But if you're answering all these questions and you're still sweet by the end of it, good, great, excellent. If you're feeling a bit challenged by these questions, you're like, oh shit, like,
or a bit triggered.
Yeah, if you're annoyed at me now, if you're thinking Sam's an idiot, who does she think she is? It might be worth having a little think about some of the decisions that you've made and outcomes, because it might not be too late for your puppy just yet. I can't stress, I know I've said it 1,000 times, can't stress enough how often you get these bloody dogs try and come for temperament assessments and the dog is cooked. And I'm like, what happened to this dog? Like, why is it like that? And they're like, I don't know. It's been going to school since it was like 12 weeks old, getting walked around by all the students and, being kept awake all day, every day, and, being handled by different teachers and da-da-da-da-da and all this stuff. And I'm like, was it? Okay. Well, your dog's cooked. So that's unfortunate.
I actually want to add something to that just quickly, is as much as also you need to be asking yourself if you can handle these situations. Another question is, how do you know when your dog is having an aversive reaction? Because I feel like that is also something that isn't obvious. And that's a good question to.
And what do you, here you go. Do you want to hear a horror story? Oliver was here as a puppy. So this is the big point about, I've got a dog outside of the playpen. So that's the therapy dog. So the kids come here, they're expecting to pat a bloody dog. There better be a bloody dog I can pat. So even though I've got this situation where all the puppy's asleep, you can't pat the puppy, but here's Sunny and he wants to play fetch, like here's this dog and they want to do, these things, and we can pat this dog. And if Oliver wakes up, we will be able to, we'll be able to pat him for a bit. Those kinds of things. That was a major, major difference for me. So there was no problem with, like, we've cruised through it. Like, there has certainly been times when kids have been disappointed, but we've been able to repair those ruptures because there's another dog here for them to, pour their love out on, and get all that sensory input and, all that sort of stuff. And the sessions are an hour. So usually the puppy is going to wake up, but if they don't wake up, that's okay. Like, and we can just watch the puppy, and we would sit on the floor, near the playpen and stuff like that, and watch the puppy sleep and do all those things.
That's soothing in and of itself.
People love watching dogs sleep. Yeah.
Love it when Dougie sleeps.
Yeah. So one time, I had a kid here. That's actually, I won't tell the whole story because it's a bit sad, but he didn't want to leave. And to summarize, I don't think this was a new kid. I think I'd only seen him once before. I don't think he had much of a safe space outside in his life. He was probably about 8, but he was a really big 7 or 8. He was a really, really big kid, and he did have developmental delay, including intellectual delay. And Oliver was in the playpen. Oliver must have been about maybe 12 or 14 weeks old. And Sunny was here, and I was wrapping up. Didn't realize, like, this kid doesn't do transitions well. But also this was a safe space. So didn't want to leave and started to get quite, like, noisy and also aggressive as well. So there was lots of banging things and like smashing, like I had an iPad, trying to smash the iPad, running out into the hallway and banging on the glass. I got glass doors. I thought they were going to shatter. Like, I was like, it was so loud. It was like, this was like a big kid. I had a puppy and a dog. And I was like, Uh-oh.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh. So I can't restrain that kid. That's not within the scope of what I'm allowed to do in that moment. So, and the parent was just outside the door, but had no recourses either. So it was a case of we're having a meltdown and we need to be supported. But it was loud and it was screaming and yelling and stuff like that. And I was very lucky that Amy Biggs worked for me. She was my receptionist at that point. And I scooped this puppy up and like threw him at her and was like, take, and put Sunny. She took Oliver and Sunny into a different room. But she by that point, she was already working with the dogs. She'd done our training and blah, 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 as a backup handler. So I was really, really lucky because I couldn't manage the whole situation. I couldn't manage the kid. I just had to support him because it wasn't like a behavioral meltdown. He felt safe here. And so what had triggered him is that he didn't want to leave the dogs because he asked if he could have a sleepover at the clinic. And I was like, but there's not going to be anybody here. And he was like, but what about the dogs? I was like, oh, the dogs go home with me. And then he just snapped it. So it was just about safe space stuff. And Oliver was a puppy. So this is like 8 years ago. That is one of the moments that really shaped for me, like, so we need transitional items. Like we're creating this safe space and then we're sending these kids back out there. Like, see ya. Time's up.
Yeah, that would be tough. Yeah.
It is hard. And especially, puppies, like we get that oxytocin response and stuff.
They're just heavenly. Like
everybody loves puppies so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's scary, man. And like, that's the kind of scenario that could have permanently traumatized your dog, Oliver being his age.
And he was right at that.
Yeah. Critical period.
12 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember him being like handbag size fluffy. Like he wasn't like 7 weeks, he must have been like 12 to 14 or something. Yeah, ridiculous. So terrifying. And my job, I can't tend to the puppy at that point in time. I have to tend to that child because that's my job. That is my job. So bringing a dog to work doesn't mean that you get to not do your job. You have to do your job. My job is to take care of this child, not to be like, unlucky kid, like, I hope you don't smash through that glass. Like, you better not break my iPad, and be like trying to give your puppy treats and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, because you're just worried. That's the thing. You're worried about your dog getting an adverse reaction to all this sound and yelling and stuff like that. You can't prioritize the dog in that moment. You have to prioritize the kid, particularly in the field that I am in. It would be absolutely unacceptable for me to leave that kid to his own devices and just worry about my dog. That's not on at all. That's the risk that you're running. So if you think like you might have the right dog and the right situation and all these things are in play and it's all good, but the one thing that you can't manage is what everybody else is doing. So it just depends like what role that you're in at your work and, those kinds of things. And like, certainly I took risks by having those situations. This is, that was 8 years ago. I learned a lot from that. That's where this information comes from, is from me doing it before you and going, that could have gone really bad. And somehow getting through stuff luckily, with luck for a lot of things, with luck getting through things and scenarios and situations, but seriously learning from it, because it's like, oh man, that's scary for a dog. So I do understand where people are coming from, that they want to take their dogs, they want to socialize them, or they just don't want to leave the puppy at home. I get it. I totally get it. Listen, I'm on your page. I get it. I just have a lot of trust and faith and confidence in my position to be able to manage 99% of what is going to go down for these dogs. Do you know what I also had? Weird scenarios where, this must have been with Nala. I'd be like, I can't remember specifically this situation, but I remember that it was a kid and I had toys in both. I was like, have a toy in both hands because she's going to bite. And then them not having the toy, like just not using the toy. I mean, sitting there like literally right with them and putting their hands in her mouth.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I've managed this and it's still not happening.
What is happening? I think
I've planned for this and yet.
And it's such a foolproof plan. But what I hadn't factored in is that this kid's just ignoring me.
Just doesn't want to hold the toys. Yeah.
And I'm like checking in comprehension wise. And like they're telling me what they need to do. And then and I'm like, your hand's in the dog's mouth. Like, what's happening here? Because then that's part of my job is to be like, is this like a processing thing? Like, yeah. But I think it was a sensory seeking thing. Like, it was either total oppositional behavior, or sensory seeking. Like, I just want to feel what it feels like, which I have kids do that. They touch the electric fence at the farm. I'm like, don't touch it, it's on. And they're like, is it on? And I'm like, it's on, don't touch it. And then they touch it, and then they touch it again. Like they're looking, I'm off it. I'm sick of explaining. Just like, they know the kids that are going to touch it. They're seeking, it's so, side note, it's all the ADHD kids that do it, that they touch the fence, seeking that stimulation. Risk taking, I don't know, whatever, but they do stuff like that. So I think it was more of that kind of thing, but my mind was exploding when I was watching this happen, because I'd never seen this before. And I was like, what is happening? But also, like, as a psychologist, this is very interesting behavior, but also, can you stop teaching my dog to bite, please?
Yeah.
Like, you get this secondary, which is your like transference, counter-transference or thing going on. You're bringing a bias into the room because I'm trying really hard to teach this dog not to mouth, and she hasn't been mouthing because we've got toys in our hands, and this kid's putting their hand in her mouth, and it's undoing, in my head, like, that's undoing my training. But that's not the right way to handle that scenario, because it's not about me. And it's not about my dog. It's about what's going on with this kid. Like, what's
this kid telling us?
Why do they do? Yeah. What is that? Where else does this happen? What else? How else does this, the function, whatever the function of this is, where else does that present? Like, what else happens that's like this in this kid's life? Like, is this something that we need to understand better and work on? And like, so in that sense, it's an observation. I've got to make an observation while this is taking place, and I'm talking to them. But if I'm just like, stop it, like, first of all, they're not going to.
They've made it clear that
they're not going to stop
it's not happening.
It's not happening. But it's an like, I actually need, that's a presentation of a behavior that I really need to try and understand. So if I just stop that, like, they're not going to be able to tell me why they're doing that. It's a kid. But they, they might have some ideas, but generally speaking, kids aren't going to be able to answer those sorts of questions. So when you are observing it, that's your job, is to kind of try and help them information gather whilst it's in the moment, whilst it's happening. That's a great opportunity to do that. But you do have this back of your brain being like, stop teaching my dog bad habits, please. So I guess, the whole point is that it's really hard to raise a puppy in a workplace. There's lots of things you can control, even if you've got the right dog for it, which I think you should, if you're not a dog professional, a dog behavior professional, if you're not a dog professional, you should get a dog professional's opinion on whether or not this is the right kind of temperamented puppy. You remember Bella from Farm Stay? So we've just had Bella, the puppy, here for Farm Stay. That dog's got a temperament where she could go into a school, like for a visit in a school. Like she has got that temperament. And I've met other puppies the same, where they are just very solid, confident dogs, strong dogs. Absolutely. Like they do exist. There's very, very chill dogs as well. So also, very stable dogs. But then there's also like millions of dogs that don't meet that criteria. And it would be really hard to know if you're not a dog professional, because you're not looking at hundreds of dogs all the time.
Yeah.
So I would ask a dog professional if you're not one already. If you are a dog professional, then you can ask yourself and just be honest with yourself. The other thing to consider is the workplace environment. So like what I discussed before, who is this benefiting? Does it just benefit the puppy? Are we just here? Is it benefiting you because you don't want to leave the puppy at home? Or is it benefiting someone else as well? If your job is to be of benefit, provide services of benefit to a clientele, are you doing that by having this dog here, or are you not doing that by having this dog here? Sometimes, I would say in like an office environment, yeah, if someone's got a pet puppy, bring it in and let it sleep in a playpen or a crate so it's not at home by itself. But the difference in that scenario is that it's just a pet dog. Its job isn't to develop a relationship that's mutually beneficial with everybody that bloody works here. It's just your pet dog. So, Max has got a dog, like cute, I don't need to develop an emotional attachment with that dog because it's Max's dog. So who cares that I can't pat it? I think Max is a bitch because she's not letting me pat her dog, but whatever. That will happen for sure. But the workplace is going to be a buzz with like, has everyone seen that Max is bringing her dog in? It's not letting anyone pat it. That'd be the water cooler conversation for sure.
So would.
Absolutely. I'd be the ringleader of that. Why is she bringing it in here? Why is she even bringing it? Like, get a dog sitter. What are you doing? Work from home. Oh my God. As if you'd bring
everyone
a dog
can look at my dog. They're just not allowed to touch it.
She put it in her handbag. Oh my God.
It's actually a backpack.
Yeah. It's in a pram. No, I'd be like, please, Max, just let me pat the dog. Please, 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 please.
I'd consider it.
I would make myself.
No promises though, Sam.
I'd make myself the puppy's godmother. And I would be like, well, so, obviously part of the family. So it's a different scenario to if you're bringing a dog in somewhere, like, even if you work in like a headspace center, and the reason I'm saying that is because I was at headspace, you might be thinking, well, I've got this dog out in the back room. And so therefore it's not meeting any of our clients. So it's fine. But at least 50% of that dog's job is preventing all of your colleagues at headspace from getting burnout. So we hear that day in, day out, over and over and over again, it's the staff. The dog benefits the staff. Yes, it does. So if you bring your puppy in and you've got it in some crate or playpen or whatever at Headspace, Young Care, whatever, any of those places where you've got like those group offices and all that sort of stuff, and you're like, no one touch the dog. Don't touch the dog. Then the staff are going to be like, I don't like this dog because I don't have a relationship with it because I can't have a relationship with it. So I don't like it. I don't regard the dog. I don't regard the dog's value. That's detrimental, in my opinion, to everything you're trying to achieve with this dog. So you don't then just get the dog to an age where they can be temperament tested. You do the course, they get temperament tested, they do their obedience videos. and then we go tick, and then you rock in one day and you're like, okay, guys, you're allowed to touch the dog. That's not relationships don't work like that. So I think that you're setting yourself up for problems if that is what your plan is. That's my opinion. Okay. That's just my opinion.
It would also just be very hard for your work colleagues to suddenly feel comfortable approaching your dog as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Even if they're told that they're allowed to.
Exactly.
It's going to be awkward.
They don't have a relationship with the dog. They've spent 12 months being told you can't have anything to do with this dog. And then all of a sudden, overnight, the dog walks in and that's like, okay, now you can have a relationship with the dog. I don't think that that's how relationships work. I just don't think that's how they work. So again, that's my opinion. I think that we can set ourselves up for problems. However, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, that's not what's going to happen at my workplace. That's not what's going to happen with my dog. That's not what's going to happen with me. That's not. Good. So you've done your mental checklist and you've, considered everything. There'll be more things to consider than what I just thought to mention today as well. But the main thing is this puppy's development being supported throughout this time that they're there at this workplace? And are you being able to do your job as a professional to the standard that you were, with the standard of client care, with the standard of colleague relationships, with that standard of everything else? Are you able to do that to the same standard that you were before you got this puppy? So I think those are the main things that you've got to think about. It's not about what we tell you to do, because every course we've got dogs in that have been in workplaces already. Oh, actually, and I wanted to mention, this comes up regularly. Adolescent dogs in workplaces, get some advice. Get some advice. Yeah. Get some advice. When you raise a dog in an environment where you're regularly at this environment, like a workplace, if the dog develops undesirable behaviors, such as barking at people who come through the door, like they would at your house, because all of our dogs bark at the door at the house. If your dog's barking at the door at your workplace, that is unacceptable. So if your dog learns to do that in your workplace, it is hard to fix that. It is hard to fix some of these things that they learn to do when they're young dogs in a workplace. So if we don't know how to...
You don't have any control over the environment.
Correct.
Control, yeah.
Imagine trying to get Dougie to never bark at your front door when someone opens the door. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Like, as if, like, I want my dogs to bark at the door, at the gate, that sort of stuff, because they're in the house, like I want to know if someone's coming up to the house. But if I considered, I just want to teach my dogs to never bark when someone approaches the house, I don't think that's a thing. Like, I just don't know. No, like, you'd have to lock them up outside somewhere where they can't see or hear anything, like in a sensory safe area outside or something. So when it happens in the workplace, it's very detrimental to the experience of the people who are supposed to be developing a relationship with the dog. It's annoying to the staff, and it's unacceptable. So those are the types of things that sometimes people come to us and go, oh, the dog's been at the workplace for 5 months and it's barking at people the whole time. And I'm like, bummer. Like,
ooh.
Sucks. Oh, uh-oh. Like, so I guess just pointing out that it's hard. It is a lot easier to prevent those things from becoming a problem than what it is to fix them down the track. So just be aware of, there are like a number of things like that we need to make sure that we are informed about, so that we're not developing habits that are very, very unhelpful or not allowed. So for example, mouthing clients is not acceptable. Like, that's, again, these are my opinion. These things are my opinion, but dare say that barking at people and biting them is going to be unacceptable from pretty much everyone's standards.
Yeah.
And peeing and
I was
toileting.
about to say toileting inside.
Yeah. If they learn that, you're going to be, these things are a nightmare. So just be really aware that there's these things that they can take a very long time to fix. And if they become environment specific to your work area, they can become a real problem to solve down the track. Very time consuming, sort of lots of counter conditioning, all that sort of stuff. The retraining is a lot harder than training. So just be aware that a lot of the time that people are coming along to the courses and the dogs have already developed behaviors that we've now got to undo or deal with or whatever. Okay.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. And like I more and more as we, develop, this industry develops and we see more and more dogs and people around and stuff like that. Like we were saying before, like they're all different. There's no rule. It's very hard to make rules that fit every situation. I don't know that you can. I really don't think that there's going to be one set of rules that's going to work for every dog and every handler in every type of workplace with every type of client demographic. I think it is something that needs to be considered on a case-by-case basis. However, the safest thing for me to do is to say, don't take your dog until it's been trained and assessed. There are insurance, I should have mentioned, there is insurance issues as well. Okay, so check with your insurance company whether or not they're happy for you to have a young dog that hasn't been temperament tested at any
so
dog.
They might require therapy.
They are
okay.
requiring, but I'm not an insurance expert, but there are insurance companies who are absolutely demanding that you go and get your dog trained and assessed before it's in a workplace. Absolutely. You need to ask them that question. So in terms of making decisions, I want people to be able to have enough information that they can make good decisions for themselves. Make a good decision for you and your dog and your client group, and that fits within your industry standards, because I'm a psychologist. I don't know what you guys are. Like, you might be a teacher or a teacher aide or a counselor or a social worker or podiatrist, and I don't know anything about being a podiatrist. Like, I don't know what your rules are. And I'm certainly not going to go and find out what every regulatory body's rules are. I've got enough problems keeping up with the psych rules. Like, it's a nightmare. So that's never happening. And I don't think that there is any one body that's ever going to be able to keep up with the expectations of each different profession that's trying to incorporate a therapy dog into their professional practice for the benefit of their clients, their client outcomes. We all want the same thing. We all want our client outcomes to be improved. We all want to add great things to this industry. So make good choices and make informed choices. Do everything you can to set yourselves up for success. Our general advice is don't take the dogs until they're trained and assessed, because I think that that's the smartest thing to do. I think that's the most risk averse thing to do. If you've got other ways to manage stuff, like I'm an accredited dog trainer. So if I'm going to take a puppy somewhere, I've temperament tested my own puppy. I think this is going to be da-da-da-da-da. If you're an accredited dog trainer, then you can make decisions like that as well. There's no, do you know what I mean? Like, you've got that there, you can do that. If you're, it's just about having information, considering the information, having a really good think about what's going to work for you and your environment, but understanding that the safest thing to do that's going to give you the absolute best odds at having a dog that has a suitable temperament for therapy work is to not take risks with them when they're in that very early stage of their life, which is up to about 12 months. Don't take the risks with them in the workplace. Take those risks with them at Bunnings, at Pet Barn, at your local markets, at your cafe. Take those risks there, because if something scary happens there, who cares? Go sit out the front of Coles, and if someone drops something,
yourself.
you can remove yourself at any time. Like, You can give all of your energy and attention to the dog. You can make sure that you have got a plan in place. You move away, you get closer. Like you've just got so much more control over the situation and the outcome of the situation than if you're having to, like the examples that I gave, where you've got to give all of your resources to this client at this time, because that's your responsibility to do that. So have a good think about it, guys. Don't email me about your puppy in your workplace unless you're emailing about, you can talk to me about it. If you want to do some consulting or something, like if you want a training plan or something like that, but otherwise my replies are going to be like, good luck. Listen to this podcast.
Your reply is going to be, exactly.
Yeah.
Go back and listen.
Listen
like, again.
I don't know how long we've been talking. It's over an hour, but I haven't even scraped the surface really of like all the things to consider and all the things that have happened to me in the past, and like all the things that I set up to be ready to have a puppy in a workplace. And, so they can't be crying. They can't be crying in the playpen. You got to already fix that at home. You got to have them not crying.
That's a big deal in and of itself.
Takes time to do that with some dogs. You cannot have, I in the work role that I'm in, I cannot have a puppy crying in there. Can't. This is a group practice. I've got kids with autism coming in here, sensory stuff. This is supposed to be a safe space. We can't be having a dog screaming in the playpen. Not on. So
stressful enough at home.
Immediately you're out. But anyway, so have a think about it, guys. But yeah, take home message being, I'm not here to tell everybody what to do. I'm just here to give you advice and information and points to consider. And you could talk to someone else as well. Talk to one of the other therapy dog trainers or whatever, and they'll probably give you different advice and different things to consider, because we all come from different walks of life as well. So, and we've had different experiences with clients and dogs and things like that. So do some research, ask around, ask yourself the questions, ask other trainers the questions, see what they say, what are the pros, what are the cons, but use your critical thinking and relate that information back to your specific situation, your specific dog, and you make decisions about your dog and your job and your industry, because there's not going to be anybody that can answer those questions better than you. So our job's just to provide that advice and that opportunity to have a think about these things. And then, if you do want to book in for some consulting around your puppy, go for it.
We also do the puppy and adolescent school program. So that's also helpful if you need ongoing support.
Particularly the webinars are super helpful.
So good.
There's lots of information in those. So keep that in mind, that they are webinars that come with those classes. And then the classes are your opportunity to have a chat about what's going on with your puppy specifically.
Thanks, Sam. Oh,
pleasure.
So much to unpack there. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you're interested in studying with Therapy Dogs Australia, or you have a few more questions before deciding, please get in touch with us by emailing courses@therapydog.com.au or visiting our website at www.therapydog.com.au for more information and FAQs.